Welcome to The Independent Musician. Our weekly podcast will focus on the independent artist and the music market at large. You'll hear from those artists as well as music execs, tech experts, and marketing leaders from around the globe. We'll discuss what it takes to make it in the biz and how you can overcome obstacles as you progress your craft, all the while making it interesting and fun. Now, here's your host, Mark Skoda.
This is Mark Skoda, and you're listening to The Independent Musician, another weekly podcast here from Iron Gate Records. And we're joined today by Vice President and Agent Zach Hartley from United Talent Agency. Zach and I met just before the holidays, and I'm very pleased to have him on board and talk a little about what it takes to be a talent at United Talent Agency. Zach, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate you having me.
So it was great meeting you prior to the holidays, and we got a chance to just introduce one to another. And I found really your backstory interesting, as well as sort of the whole UTA business very interesting. For my fans and for listeners, you know, United Talent Agency really started through a merger in 1991. I think Jeremy Zimmer is currently your CEO of the company. And it's been extremely successful. I mean, it's fascinating. As I would do some research, you have so many different divisions and so much capability. You wonder how you manage it all under one roof.
Well, I think the key is not managing it under one roof. You know, we're grateful for the our presence out in Los Angeles, where we're headquartered and where Jeremy is based. But the evolution of the company to expand into New York and Nashville and London, and being able to harness all the great team members and talents that we have internally to build the business, I think is what's led to a lot of the success.
Now, you obviously came out of, when we talked earlier and introduced one another, you came from Indiana, good old Midwestern boy. Tell me a little bit about your sort of travels to get to where you are today at UTA.
Yeah, well, it's funny. I heard a few years ago someone at a panel said, nobody grows up wanting to be an agent, and I would be the exception to that rule. When I was a senior in high school, I was working on a marketing project. My partner on the project was a guy named Zach Martin, and we put together a business plan and set up a sports agency. And I went into college, with the goal of becoming a sports agent. And over time, whether it's through kind of mentors that I had or connections, my path led me to Chicago, where I spent a year, not in sports, but doing, I was at a small TV lit agency there. And after about a year, relocated to Nashville, where I was hired by Paradigm, which is now Wasserman Music, in their music department as an assistant for Bobby Cudd. So I was over there for about 6.5, 7 years before joining UTA in June of 2021. So you really cut your teeth in the industry, as you said, sort of growing up into it, almost from your aspirations out of college, to do the kind of work you're doing and working with the kind of talented individuals that you get the chance to work with every single day. Yeah, I think I've been grateful to be surrounded by the people that I have. I remember years ago when I was at Paradigm, the head of our office, Jonathan Levine, told me once. He goes, when you think about it, about all the people in the world that do what we do, all of the, cover bands to local bands to global touring successes, and everywhere in between, we're really in the top 1% of what we do. And I thought about that, each county, each city, across the entire world, and the volume and the level of talent that we get to deal with, really probably is in the top 1%. And you think of who else makes up that 1%. And there's something that you can take away from each and every one of them. So it's tough not to feel, a continued level of excitement and growth and passion for what you do when you're surrounded by so many people like that.
So help me understand in our audience, as a agency versus a record label, where is the line in delineation between what UTA does versus a Universal Music Group, and how do you play in that sort of realm of music distribution through to the shows? We're not in the music distribution business. So a label is the one who is essentially selling the recorded product, buying, putting together and selling the recorded product. An agency on the music side is, for the most part, booking the live shows. Now, UTA is fortunate enough to have agents that also specialize in other areas, whether it's brand partnerships or
film, TV, book publishing, venture capital, gaming, so on and so forth, everything that you could possibly imagine. But in the music side, the core job of the agent is to handle the strategy and facilitation of the live show, whereas the label is focused on the recorded product, the actual song and album itself.
I think also, if you look at UTA's website and look at all of the various service entities, I mean, it's extraordinary. And again, I don't want to pigeonhole to music only. I mean, you provide a plethora of capability from comedy to TV to music to sports, as well as obviously authors and public speakers. And of course, on a vertical from the point of view of everything from data analytics to consulting, as you pointed out, and gaming, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's an extraordinary vision that was started from a simple merger in California in 1991 to where you are today. And I think, if I recall from reading the financials, it's over $500 million a year business. So not so bad, frankly.
Yeah, like I said, the growth and the way the growth has happened is incredibly impressive. I cannot speak to all of the work and the foundation that was laid all those years ago. I'm not worthy to comment on that, having just joined
Sure.
A year and a half ago. But all the different touch points on kind of the flywheel that is the UTA business is impressive, and the cohesion between departments and offices make it so much easier to operate and deliver first class service to everyone. We have everyone from, even Julian Jacobs in our marketing department making stops in Nashville, visiting with clients, visiting with agents, to, like I said, brand partnerships, to comedy, to sports. We just recently opened up an Atlanta office, which will also feature an artist space, for our to showcase artist works. And there's so many different touch points, and the collaboration between colleagues is really what makes it special. And I remember on my very first day with UTA, I got a call from Jeremy Zimmer, and he said the people that will succeed most in business, but particularly here at UTA, are those that go outside of their office, their individual office, their department, their office in general, in their country too, facilitating with their colleagues overseas as well. And I think that's certainly true.
Yeah, the whole idea of high touch, high tech, as I like to call it. We used to call it in my corporate days the Goya effect. Get off your ass and get out and work with people and meet with people, because music, and particularly as we're talking about, but also in general as an agency, you have to get to know the people you're working with, and you have to build those relationships, because ultimately the trade that we do, and that certainly as a small independent label, and you as a large agency, is on the basis of who you know and how you know them and how you come to help them. And in the end, that is not done sitting behind a desk and making a few phone calls and doing a couple of Zoom calls.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you really become a fabric of both your local and the broader music and also entertainment communities as well. I think that we have something special here in Nashville, and each market has the thing that makes it unique and special. But we're grateful, in UTA's music department too, to only be 7 years old. The success and that we've had and the success to come, I think, is happening at a very quick pace, which I think is, it's just something to take note of, and credit to all of the people that have made it what it is thus far.
How do you, let's talk about artists, and we'll focus on the music division, because you could go off on days just to go through everything. And even in your year and a half, I doubt that you have a handle on everything that UTA does. It's pretty extraordinary when you read the background information. But how do you look at artists, and how do you begin to prospect for artists, and what do artists have to frankly be considered for a UTA agency relationship?
Yeah, I think, I think first and foremost, I think that, while we are one and we work as a team, we also all have different tastes as well. And there's no one, criteria or factor that, resonates necessarily with the company as a whole. There's no one size fits all criteria. We are filled with departments from, electronic to country to pop and everywhere in between, and all the subgenres that fall through it. So there's no one easy, quick answer there. Obviously, when you have your global stars, be it Bad Bunny or Lizzo or Post or whoever it is, obviously those are areas that we can provide tremendous value and service across all departments. But for me, when I'm looking at an artist, there's always usually an X factor component. I think, what is the differentiator? Excuse me, that makes the artist stick out. And it can be an abundance of things. It could be the live show itself. It could be the songwriting. It could be the final product of the music. It could be the story that they tell, or the way that in which that they write and tell their story. So yeah, I think there's always an X factor that at least I look for. What's the differentiator?
Right. As we sort of look at live performance in particular, I mean, post-pandemic, have things changed much pre-pandemic to post-pandemic in terms of bookings or how you're arranging tours? I've read recently a number of articles by some artists who just basically said, look, I'm tired of touring. I'm not making any money. The logistics are killing me. The expenses are too high. On the other hand, I've got in my own sort of group of artists, people that are working 3-4 days a week in their markets and doing extremely well. What have you found personally in looking at the market at large around performance generally?
I haven't really heard of people that are saying I just can't tour anymore, or I'm going to hang it up. I think touring is such an important component when looking at artist development, but also finances. However, everything is obviously more expensive right now. So whether it's the cost of fuel, and I mean, heck, we could even talk about if you're a smaller act traveling in a 12-passenger van, or even the cost of diesel, whatever it is. I mean, there's so many different things that go into just travel alone, airfare costs or whatever it is. But paying for your band or catering or whatever it is, the cost of touring is just more expensive right now. So that it definitely does place a squeeze on margins and does require a little bit of extra tact, I think, on behalf of a number of people on the artist team, whether it's the business manager, the manager, the agent, whoever it is, promoter. But I think that we will still the constant, I think, post and pre-COVID will be the importance of live music, and the demand, I think, for live music is not going anywhere. And I would even broaden it and say just the live experience.
Yeah, I have to say I've talked to one of my recent artists in Carolinas, and he's a young man, 19 years old, just kicking it. I mean, he's one of the guys that are doing 3 shows every week. And what he's discovered, and certainly what I've talked to a number of my artists around, is the fact that many venues are opening up live music because it keeps people in the seats longer, so they're selling more drinks, they're selling more food, they're creating a better reputation. And B, I think people are just tired of being behind a keyboard. There is a social element of live music that you cannot capture any other way. And I think I'm hopeful, certainly as I've talked to people, and obviously to some degree you're suggesting, is that live music and the experience of live generally, whether it's music or other events, are really what people are beginning to yearn for again, because we've been so isolated, particularly for the 2 years we were going through the pandemic.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that there's also a social or cultural moment factor to be considered as well. People want to be able to show that they're part of something, whether it is at a Taylor Swift show or at the Super Bowl, whatever it is. People take pride in being at these events and being a part of these moments. And I think that also contributes, not just the artist that contributes to the cultural conversation, but ultimately the fans as well that advocate for these artists and spread the messaging and the artwork that they're sharing with the world.
How does UTA interact or interface with a company like Live Nation? Is there a collaboration that goes on there, with others that are in the ticketing business and also who manage some of the bigger venues? Or are you separate, distinct, or do you, collaborate with them?
Yeah, I mean, I think collaborate is the best word. I mean, that's essentially what we do. So we work with, whether it's a Live Nation or an AEG or independent promoters in local markets, and they're the ones that we work with to book the show. So that we are the seller and they are the buyer in a sense.
I see. And in terms of, I think you and I talked a little bit about this, this whole dynamic pricing of tickets, and I think you were insightful in saying, there's a lot of people paying a lot of money now for some of these legacy acts or even some of these sort of demand-based ticketing. but it's also restricting how many shows they see a year. So we have both a time budget, that is the time people will give you to see something, and then we have the financial budget. But one other comment you made is about app exhaustion. I'd love you to expand on that a little bit, because I thought that was an interesting comment when we met earlier.
More and more, I mean, I was in even Target the other day. For some reason, there were no price tags on an entire aisle of things. And an associate walked by, said, man, am I missing the prices somewhere? She goes, oh, well, if you download our app, you can scan it and see what the price is. And I'm thinking, here we go again. I have to download another app. It seems like you have to download so many apps to function in today's world. And so I don't know necessarily about others, but personally, I'm just tired of the apps. It seems like you have to have an app for everything.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I'm interested to see where that will go. I think we went through a period where there was artist websites and there's artist Facebook pages, and now we have, some artists have their own app. But what is home base for some people? Some people, it's just a link tree. And that's kind of their home base. And, there's links that take them to different things. Websites are still obviously very prevalent. Facebook doesn't necessarily have their tour feature anymore. So we'll be interested to see how people continue to use that platform in the future in regards to hosting data in addition to fostering community. But it's exhausting just to think. There's a reason that we have people that specialize in social media marketing and digital marketing.
Yeah,
right. One of the reasons is because there's so many places to post.
Yeah, I think, it's interesting. I've watched Facebook, Instagram, of course. One, engagement rates have been down because they're pushing that little boost button more and more. They want you to spend ad dollars. And I tell my artists in particular, your web page becomes an important component of your community and fan base, because if you're promoting stuff on Facebook gets the link. You don't. But if you're promoting on your website and building a community, whether it's emails or text messaging or just simply somebody signing up to your newsletter, you own that data. And that's important, because I think the next sort of competition here is going to be for the artists who can manage their data better than somebody else. And I think, to your point, there are specialists in that area, but we've been doing some research in this matter. And, a lot of the social media apps are not giving the bang for the buck anymore. And then, of course, even we talk about TikTok, still, they're looking at putting their own music service out now to compete with the likes of Apple and Spotify. And of course, we have the counterpoint, which is a lot of the government agencies and state agencies are no longer allowing TikTok on phones. So, artists have to be careful about where they sort of place their bets and how they monetize that investment that they make in the whole web world. I think that's a real challenge and continually changing. It's something that can be mastered over time, but it is an interesting conundrum to face in amongst everything else, such as promoting your music and getting the gigs done.
Well, it's like a kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. I mean, you can want to be careful, and let's just roll with TikTok. You can want to be careful about the content you're posting or the information you're sharing, and maybe be a little more passive on that. But then, are you missing out on some of the opportunities that could be afforded to you? Opportunities that might just come, whether it's virality or even the analytics and the engagement data that industry professionals want to see before taking stock in you. So it's a tough thing. It's a tough thing to manage and to figure out. Without question.
That was an interesting point as well. When you look at artists, obviously, I think you shared with me that you have a whole crew that looks at the entire social media profiles, streams, all those sorts of things to sort of ferret out what is real versus what is bought. I mean, I was reading a very good article. The big guys buy streams for their artists all the time. They don't get credited for it because they're the big guys. But obviously smaller artists who are trying to play in that game sometimes get caught. And I think it was interesting you pointed out that, you guys really try to vet an artist before you take them on board to make sure that their numbers are true blue rather than sort of store-bought. Is that right?
Well, yeah, I think when you're, when you become invested in an artist, you want to know holistically, who they are, and in order to do your job effectively, you have to know the strengths as well as the weaknesses, and using that data to your advantage. So, when it comes to touring, knowing where the Spotify listeners are coming from, or the demographics of Instagram followers, whatever it may be, is something that we always look at. So the tools that are provided, whether it's direct via, Spotify or Apple Music for Artists, or if it's through, third-party services like Chartmetric, that kind of give a more holistic view on the digital, health, for lack of a better word, of an artist. They're all helpful. Kevin Plank, the founder of Under Armour, had a quote one time that I reference back to a lot. And he said, "Data is the new oil." And I think that it's 100% the truth. I mean, there's companies that just aggregate data and give you, suggested decision makings based on the data. It's outside of the music world too, whether you look at a company like Snowflake or again, whether it's like a Chartmetric. So it's of crucial importance.
Well, indeed. And that's why they can tell us that we want to buy that can of coffee when we talk about it a moment ago, right? So everybody's monitoring all of our actions across the web. And I guess, as it relates to the artists that you have on board, and I was always interested to figure out, how do you each have a group of artists that you manage? Because looking at your artist list, I mean, it is at least 1,000 artists. I don't know how many the total is. I didn't go through and count them. But I mean, if I'm somebody who wants to book somebody, how do I go about that? What do I do? Where do I start? I go out there and start looking at people, or do I talk to somebody at UTA, or do I say I've got a gig? So that'd be great to hear from the fans and the listeners here.
Yeah, from a promoter standpoint is what you're asking?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Typically, either one of two things happen. Either the promoter knows who they want, and I might get a direct outreach for one of my artists, or someone might come and say, hey, I'm putting on a 3-day. I got one earlier today. A 3-day country classic rock music festival I think it was near Winnipeg, and here's my my talent budget, and need to fill X number of slots, and would love to see who you have available in that price range. So to revert back to your kind of initial question, yes, I have a list of clients that I oversee, and we're called my responsible agent clients. Okay. But we also all have kind of territorial or departmental responsibilities too, be that covering a specific part of the country for a genre or a size room, or covering fairs or festivals, whatever it is. We kind of have a specialty that we work in as well on behalf of the larger UTA roster. And again, this is where kind of the teamwork and the cohesion comes into place. We're not just all operating individually, but one at the same time.
And as it relates to the artists that have come on board, I mean, clearly you have quite a number of people, and there's only limited sort of time in the day. They must be doing some self-promotion as well. I mean, this has got to be a two-way street. Am I right in that assumption?
Sometimes it's a 2 or a one-way street. Sometimes it's an 8-way street. It just kind of depends on the artist.
Right.
We're grateful, to have other partners, on the artist team as well. Whether it's the manager, the publicist, or the label, or the business manager, whomever it is. It does take a village at times. And as, we continue to grow the career of an artist, you need more and more pieces. The artist at the end of the day is a company. And as that company grows, you need to hire more staff that can take care of the business and nurture it and help it grow in the way that the artist wants it to. So it's definitely not a one-man show by any stretch.
And I guess, obviously artists make their money today now on really gigging, touring, and merchandise. I mean, they can make some money, decent money on streaming, but generally those are, literally millions and millions of streams to get any real substance out of it. Of course, there is the licensing of their songs as well. And does UTA provide a publishing house that gets them sync licensing deals in TV or commercials, other realms that you oversee as a company?
Yeah, we do not have a sync department at UTA. Okay. But I have a client that is working with their publisher and label, and they have arms that are, in the sync world, or movie studio, whatever it is. Obviously Sony, Universal, Warner, et cetera, all have those. So it depends on the artist too, what sometimes what job is being done by which piece. We have several pieces of the pie. Have brand partnership arms or publicity arms or whatever it is. So it's a case by case basis. Depending on the artist.
So when how does an artist get a consideration to be taken on board? Is there a process that you engage, and then once they're on board, do you help them sort of do the how, who, what, when, where, how, and why? The sort of look, or are they having to come to you sort of pretty much baked? I mean, I'd love to hear that view.
Yeah, a lot of times, you hit on it earlier, it's such a relational business, and a lot of times it's brought to us by the manager or by the label, or it could be the lawyer even, or publicist, whoever it is. I think within the past week, I've been contacted by a new manager who recently took over an artist that I had been talking to previously. I was contacted by a publisher, so it could be any number of team members that presented, but I had relationships with all of these people prior to the artist coming into play. So I think that's a component. It could also be, we've had artists brought to us by people that we share other clients with, or we share a different client with that person.
Okay,
the manager might have a couple of acts, at UTA, or the label might have several acts at WME or CA or whoever it is. A lot of times we might be just, if it's an artist that's out there and that, people are familiar with, we might get an updated one sheet and an overview of where they're at. We might be sent some new, unreleased music that, has been cut or sometimes hasn't been cut yet. Or we might be invited to a showcase, or it might be all of the above. But the common, fundamental is not the right word. The common denominator is usually that there's a relationship there. Now, when things take off, like we were talking about on socials, and there's a virality component, or there might be a songwriter relationship at times. There's always instances where it doesn't fall into that kind of structural process of a relationship introduction, but it's very common for it to be that way.
Yeah, and I think a lot of artists assume that once they get with an agency, they're going to be touring and they're going to be earning all kinds of money. But there's a lot of hard work by the agency and the artist. I mean, it's not automatic, and in particular, today's crowded environment where we have 60,000 new songs being presented every single day on Spotify, that's a lot of artists. And so, being in the top 1% of the agencies in the world, as UTA is, at least provides you with the clout and the marketing clout to help your artist be very successful, hopefully on the road. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we want to be more than just a booking agency.
Of course.
We want to be, an artist development company. And I think that can be said probably for all areas of business across UTA's, departments and portfolios. And at the end of the day, we don't make the art, but what our job is to, help the artist showcase that art in the best possible way that it can be done, and to, if you want to stick with the business side of it, help them in a way reach their customers. In other words, help them get fans. That's what it's all about. And that's what helping them build their business is about. So, that's where, the departments and the offices and the global presence and multiple services comes into play, because you never know where that art can grow and take you to.
And that's a good point, because ultimately an artist perhaps who is independent but needs some help, whether it's data analytics, you have a whole analytics department, whether it's promotion, even whether it's their look and feel of the art itself. Do you offer sort of those segmented services that may not be the artist onboarded per se, or can they buy those on an a la carte basis? Do you have parts of your divisions that do that, or once you engage, you have to be fully engaged with UTA?
Well, we don't have an a la carte offering or system or anything like that. We have service. We provide services to our clients, and when we take on a client, we're able to give them access to the whole building.
Exactly. Right.
Ultimately, kind of what it sounds like you're asking is if we have, brand consulting and development services, which we obviously are all industry professionals that have seen, a number of different areas in the development of those types of things. But do we have a specific, template that starts kind of auditing and, suggesting revisions to stuff? Not so much. Even earlier today, I noticed that, there was an artist not on a website that they should have been on, or, hey, we need to update probably the photos on this page, but it's not something that we necessarily go through and do a full audit on, and then spit out a report with a list of to-dos.
I guess over your career, obviously technology has played quite a bit of importance, but more to the issue, it's really all about your relationship within your various clients and being able to identify within UTA the myriad services that can be brought to bear to manage that artist and to manage their brand/business as they grow. Is that basically the mission statement?
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail right on the head. There's just so many different areas, and we're involved in so many different.
I know it's incredible. If anyone looks at your website, first of all, it's incredible that you've built that team has built so many different divisions, capabilities, links, tie-ins. You need somebody, sort of that mentor, if you will, who is that client relationship manager to tie them or to connect them to various service offerings that are either, whether it's for the comedy or the musician or the sports person or the author or the speaker. I mean, each one has different requirements, and clearly UTA has so many different capabilities to provide.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it's not automatic, and we don't sign a client and then all of a sudden they get a book deal and a movie and a right. national tour.
Would you sign me, please? I'd be happy to do that. That's right.
Right, exactly. So, it's a credit to those that we do represent who are hard workers. And, we talk about the work that agents or any team member can do. But at the end of the day, it's also a lot of hard work for the artist. And we are merely a tool that is used to amplify, strategize, and help implement some of the strategies right. to, again, grow and develop that artist. But the artist is a tremendously important factor, obviously, as well.
Well, you can't put lipstick on a pig, and no matter how hard you try. And I think to the point is,
hey, I mean, sometimes you might be able to. Well, you never know.
That's right. In this day and age, who knows what takes off, right? Occasionally, we do find that in the social media world. But I think it is.
There you go.
It is important that people who come to the agency, have the talent, have sort of the work ethic that they've had to demonstrate some modicum of success, and you basically help them amplify that and extend it into new markets, new fans, and new opportunities for them. And I think that, is there any role of a good agency fundamentally to represent their clients?
You cut out there a little bit at the end. It was fundamental to
any good agency,
brands or bands.
No, for the bands and their brand by any agency to represent those clients. I mean, that is in the end the work that has to be done by both parties.
Absolutely.
So where do you see things going as we sort of close it out here? I really appreciate your insights, and I know that we had talked about many of these things one-on-one, but I wanted my audience to hear that. Where do you think things are going in 23 here as we look forward? People are completely de-pandemicized, right? They're all now saying, hell, I'm gonna enjoy life again.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that, I think we can say live music is back, and that's an awesome feeling to have. I think in 2023 we continue to see hopefully that return to normal. I mean, there's some artists that still haven't even toured, since post-COVID. So I think that we'll continue to see that, and I think that the live experience, like we've been talking about, will continue to evolve. And I think that the digital trends, again, whether it's TikTok or Reels or any of those things, will continue to grow and be tools to help artists kind of broadcast the work that they're doing. Sometimes I'm asked, where do you see the business in 5 years, in 10 years? And I always say, if somebody can promise you where it's going to be in 5 to 10 years, then I think that they're a little overconfident. 10 years ago, we didn't have TikTok, and now TikTok is obviously one of the prominent drivers of music discovery. So, I'm sure that we will continue to see new trends and the growth of old ones. And the live component, though, will never go away. That will always be a constant. It's my favorite part of the work that the artist does. I think there's no greater feeling, than being at a live show and seeing that in front of you live for everyone gathered there, and to be in that communal moment. I always say too that, I think music is one of the most powerful things in the world. There are a few things that can change a mood or alter a moment instantaneously, and yet music is one of those things. So it will continue to have that value, and I'm grateful to be a part of the live experience and helping grow the artist careers that we work with.
Indeed, I was last at a major concert, which was a KISS concert just before COVID here in Nashville, and I can recall sitting there looking at all these youngsters. I mean, they were youngsters and just having a ball, and I'm saying, dudes, KISS was my band, okay? You're way too young for that. And the legacy acts that are still touring, I mean, I'm looking forward possibly to go to the Eagles concert. It's going to be over in Knoxville here in this year. I mean, I know it's changed quite a bit, but there's these elements of nostalgia that the legacy acts continue to provide, but a lot of great new acts coming out, and as exciting as many regional acts as well. So I think, to your point, music has a way to bring people together that no other vehicle does, and it informs the spirit as well as the mind, and I think it is one of the reasons that music will always have great value, and live shows in particular will continue to grow, because I think many vendors and many venues have discovered that if you have music combined with the other assets that you bring, you can be more successful as well. So I'm looking forward to the future in a positive way now that we're well on the other side of the pandemic.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I think you hit the nail on the head.
Zach, I can't tell you how much I appreciate your time today. Thank you so much for joining the Independent Musician and offering your insights. And I promise I won't ask you for a contract yet, but I will in the future as we build a relationship. But you've been very kind with your time today, and thanks for introducing UTA to our audience, and thank you for your time as well.
You bet. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks for joining us this week on The Independent Musician. Make sure to visit our website, IronGateRecordsRadio.com, where you can subscribe to the show on your favorite streaming platform, so you'll never miss an episode. While you're at it, if you found value in this podcast, we'd appreciate you giving us feedback or simply tell a friend about the show. Be sure to tune in next week for a new episode of The Independent Musician, where the independent musician is the star.